Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vānaprastha. Yamuna Tira Vānaprastha. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Mr. Pad Paramahansa Purajikacharya Ashtoktar to the Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Purajikacharya Ashtoktar to the Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavindra ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Sri Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Oh boy, I always forget. You know where we are in this purport? Okay. Whereabouts?
Page 620. First full paragraph as far as the brahminical qualities.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this third day of May 2023 in San Diego, the glorious disappearance day of Jayananda Prabhu, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 16, entitled The Divine and Demoniac Natures, and we are studying texts 1 to 3 in the purport, and that is page 620. We're going to be reading the second paragraph, but before we do that, we're going to be chanting this verse and then reading the translation again. Okay. So, you were here yesterday. You weren't. But I think we'll dispense with a word by word in Sanskrit. We'll just go right through it because I want to try to expedite our passage here. All right, we're on page 615. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Abhayam Sattva Sangshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam damascha yagyascha svādhyāyastapa ārjavam ahimsa satyamakrodhas tyaga shantirapaiṣunam daya bhuteshvaloluptvam mardabang rirachapalam tejakshama-dviti shaucham adroho natimanita bhavanti sampadang daivim abhijatasya bharata. Just chant the first verse, okay, Bhajamana? Just the first one. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Abhayam Sattva Sangshuddhir Jnana Yoga Bhavastitihi Dhanantamascha Yagyascha Svādhyāyastapa Arjavam. Text 2. Ahimsa Satyamakrodhas Tyagakshantirapaiṣunam Dayabhuteshvaloluptvam Mardabam rirachapalam. Page 616. We're going to read the translation now of those 3 verses. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy and from the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharat, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. All right, so we read a good part of this purport, and we are now on page 620, paragraph first, 620, okay, 620, the first complete paragraph beginning as far as, on page 620. As far as the brahminical quality of simplicity is concerned, not only should a particular order of life follow this principle, but every member, be he in the brahmacārī ashram, gṛhastha ashram, vānaprastha ashram, or sannyāsa ashram, one should be very simple and straightforward. Ahimsa means not arresting the progressive life of any living entity. One should not think that since the spirit spark is never killed, even after the killing of the body, there is no harm in killing animals for sense gratification. People are now addicted to eating animals, in spite of having an ample supply of grains, fruits, and milk. There is no necessity for animal killing. This injunction is for everyone. When there is no alternative, one may kill an animal, but it should be offered in sacrifice. At any rate, when there is an ample food supply for humanity, persons who are desiring to make advancement in spiritual realization should not commit violence to animals. Real ahimsa means not checking anyone's progressive life. The animals are also making progress in their evolutionary life by transmigrating from one category of animal life to another. If a particular animal is killed, then his progress is checked. If an animal is staying in a particular body for so many days or so many years and is untimely killed, then he has to come back again in that form of life to complete the remaining days in order to be promoted to another species of life. So their progress should not be checked simply to satisfy one's palate. This is called ahimsa. Satyam is the next quality. This word means that one should not distort the truth for some personal interest. In the Vedic literature, there are some difficult passages, but the meaning or the purpose should be learned from a bona fide spiritual master. That is the process for understanding the Vedas. A shruti means that one should hear from the authority. One should not construe some interpretation for his personal interest. There are so many commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita that misinterpret the original text. The real import of the word should be presented, and that should be learned from a bona fide spiritual master. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Salakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, ahimsa, it is a little bit ironic, I would say. You know, this is one of the qualities Krishna is preaching. It's on the battlefield, and he's encouraging Arjuna to fight and kill the enemy. So is that a contradiction? Seems like it could be if seen superficially. But no, ahimsa is not an absolute principle. It is not an absolute principle. But as Prabhupada explains in this purport, with it when there's no need of killing, an overarching need, if you're starving to death and the only thing to eat is an animal, then you can kill the animal, but you perform a sacrifice, whatever you have at hand. But there's no need. There's no need. Obviously, there's no need. I was a vegetarian before I joined for a couple of years, so it's been more than 50 years. Do I look like I'm suffering because I'm not eating meat? It's absurd. It's demonic. It's demonic because it means it's interesting that eating meat is one of the disqualifications for understanding the science of Krishna consciousness. There's a verse at the very beginning. Hare Krishna, welcome again. She was here for Mangalarti. Well, you come in the morning, at least for japa period. Yeah, early in the morning. Yeah. So there's a verse at the very beginning of the 10th canto where you have to, the context is, of course, is that Parikshit has been sitting there for, 8 or 9 days? Not 8 or 9 days, 5 or 6 days. And the essence of the whole Bhagavatam is the 10th canto, is the Leela of Krishna. It's all working up to that. And he's been hearing so many things about Nrsingadev, wonderful, the 9th canto, 7th canto. And then finally get to 10th canto, so he says he's very eager for Shukadev to now narrate the 10th canto. So practically this second verse of the whole canto that he speaks, which is quoted in the Krishna book at the beginning, in the preface. Nivritta tarshayar, upagiyamanan, babavshadat shrota manobiramat, ka uttama shloka gunanavarat puman virajeda vinapashugnat. Which means that when the glories of Krishna, the pastimes of Krishna are spoken by someone who's free of material desire, another pure devotee, Shukadev Goswami, Prabhupada, like that, then it's very potent. Upagiyamana means sung and recited. Bhavaushada, it becomes a medicine to cure the disease of birth and death. It's also Bhava Roga. It's called Bhava is a word. You have to really be careful with the long and shorts. It's a totally different word than Bhava. Bhava means ecstasy, or Bhava means nature. But Bhava means constant change. And it's come to mean the change of birth, old age, disease, and death. Bhava Sagara, the ocean of birth and death, very troublesome. So we need, it's like a disease. The disease is we become attached to the things of this world and experiences. We completely forget about transcendence. And that attachment and that entanglement keeps us coming back again and again. Sometimes, as Prabhupada says in this purport, into a lower species. We don't necessarily have to be human beings. It's great suffering. So any intelligent person wants to get out of it. This is the primary impetus for a spiritual life. Is to, let's end it. Let's get mukti. Mukti means freedom. Freedom from the entanglement of birth, death, old age, and disease. So, it's kind of a disease. It's a disease of the consciousness that keeps us tied to this world. So this is a bhava aushadhi. Aushadhi is a herbal remedy or any kind of remedy for a disease. What is the remedy for disease? This singing and hearing of the glories of Krishna from Nivritta Tarshaya, someone who is free of material desire, a pure devotee. It's very important because Prabhupada, he was doing battle with that. You read the first canto, which is Prabhupada in India writing, And he says, you have to hear the Bhagavatam, not from the professional Bhagavatam reciters. We don't have those here. But in India, it's prominent. People like to hear. They immediately jump to the 10th canto, which you're not supposed to do. And it's not just the 10th canto. Krishna's dancing with the gopis. And everyone's eager to hear that. But they're not hearing with the proper frame of mind, and it's not spoken with the proper frame of mind. It's spoken for money, so that they'll have a big audience. In other words, it's a big scam. So he's saying it has to be heard from someone who's free of material desires, pure devotee. Nivritta tarshaya. Tarshaya is thirst or desires. Upagim bhavausadat shrota manobira. And it's not a bitter medicine. It's a very tasty. Shrota mano abhirama. It's very pleasing to the ear and to the heart. What's not to like? It's a wonderful description. It's very pleasing, and it frees you from birth and death. So it says, Ka uttama shloka gunanavadat. Who would give up hearing about Uttama Shloka? Uttama Shloka is a wonderful name for Krishna. He who is glorified in the greatest poetry, poetic verses. Uttama Shloka. Puman's human being. Virajya. Who would give it up? Except the Pashugnat. Pashugnat is a word that has two meanings. The first meaning is animal killers. People who are indulging in all varieties of meat eating, common outside. It could also mean those who are killing the soul, those who have renounced or averse to bhakti, and they take the impersonal path. It's a soul killing, meaning that they're negating their very personality and trying to merge their existence into the absolute. That's also a form of spiritual suicide here. So this meat eating is a big thing, because it hardens the heart. You have to be so callous. I mean, especially as an adult, you understand what's involved with you just sitting down a hamburger or a steak. Some poor animal has suffered like anything. Plus, it's suicidal for the earth. It's a large part of global warming. Many of you may know about that. All the methane, when the digestion of these thousands and millions of cows is producing methane, which is even a worse greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So anyway, so ahimsa means absolutely minimal amount of violence to do, unless it's necessary. On the battlefield of Kurukshetra, it was necessary to reinstitute Dharma for the benefit of people at large throughout the world. The Dharma Raj. Dharma Raj is Yamaraj, but his son is Yudhishthira. And Yudhishthira was going to be enthroned, Dharma personified, as the emperor of the world. So there was Krishna's plan. You may recall from the 4th chapter, why does Krishna come? These famous verses. I don't think there's anyone here of Indian extraction. At least not obviously. And so you may not know this verse, but everyone, I've never failed if I refer to this verse and there's some, if Arjun here is here, oh yeah, we learned that as children. Yada yadahi dharmasya glani bhavati bharata abhyutanam dharmasya tadatmanam sujamiham. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious principles and an upsurge of irreligion, at that time I advent myself, I appear. And what's my mission? Padatranaya sadhanam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma sangstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Millennium after millennium I come. And with these three aspects of that central mission. To protect the devotees. That's the primary thing. To protect the devotees. From the demons. Tomorrow is the appearance of Lord Nrsimhadev. Perfectly apropos. And to annihilate the miscreants, the demons. That's another obvious mission of Lord Nrsimhadev. And to reestablish Dharma for the benefit of everyone in the world. So Krishna did that, and part of his plan was to get all of these demonic forces that had been marshaled by Duryodhana and company under the aegis of Dhritarashtra. And they had already tried in so many ways, to murder the Pandavas. The house of lack and poison cake, and then the exile, and so many things. So they would stop at nothing. So this battle was there to clear the the world of so many demons and their forces. That was Krishna's plan. And here Arjuna was now getting cold feet. He didn't want to fight because he saw on both sides. It wasn't just his. Usually when you go to battle on your side, you have so many friends and allies and everything. And the other side may be someone that, you don't know who they are. But he looked across at the very beginning in the first chapter, and take my chariot between the two armies, right? Famously, that's where they are, what Krishna is speaking. They're between the two armies. And Arjuna looked across and said, oh my God, there's my beloved teacher, Dronacharya, and my grandfather who helped us when we were orphans, practically. Kunti, they needed help, and Bhishma Dev stepped in. He had no children of his own. There was a whole story behind that, but he took on responsibility. He loved them. And he's on the other side. Somehow it's a long story how he got on the other side, but there he was. And there's others also, relatives, friends, everything he sees on the other side. So he's got on both sides. This, of course, his own army had so many allies and friends. So he said, how can I fight this battle? It'll be a disaster. If I win, if I conquer, the kingdom that I have will be soaked with the blood of my people who I love. How can I enjoy it? I don't want it. I'm going off to the forest. But he really couldn't do that. He couldn't leave because, Krishna is his friend and doesn't want him to. So he's paralyzed. He sits down on the chariot. It's time to stand up on the chariot and with the bow and go forward. And it said he sits down on the chariot and drops his bow, which is, it's not done by the Kshatriyas who are in the Kshatriya mood. And then of course, so the Gita, because this is all in the first and the beginning of the second chapter, then he surrenders to Krishna and says, I really don't know what's Dharma is here. What's the right thing to do? So instead of trying to figure it out or speaking with you, debating with you friend to friend, I'm taking shelter of you as a disciple takes shelter of a guru. And that's a different relationship. Then one has trust that the guru will tell him the truth, even though it may be painful, and then proper guidance. So then the Gita actually begins, and Krishna starts speaking about the nature of the soul, it's eternal, and all these things, and then teachings come. So, ahimsa, back to ahimsa, the nonviolence principle is there as a default. In essence, we don't want to hurt even an insect, and when it gets finally warm, I hope it gets warm this year, there'll be a lot of insects coming in off the garden. You can imagine, they get under the door, and they start crawling around. I said, oh, boo, watch out. They didn't get put the insect out. So they don't get, of course, if they have to die under the feet of a devotee is suspicious, but it's not necessary. But the point is that a little violence is possible. A little, and that's the ahimsa principle. So that's one principle that's here, and it's a glorious principle, but it's not absolute. And then satyam, one should not distort the truth for some personal interest. So again, we have the exploiters of the Bhagavad Gita's popularity. Prabhupada, when he was a youth, before he met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, famously he was a follower of Gandhi. This was before independence. This is in the 20s and 30s. Independence came in about 1947, right after the war. But he was a follower, and Gandhi really liked the Gita. I mean, he apparently read it every day, but somehow he tried to screw out the nonviolence out of it, which is absurd. I mean, it's not an absolute principle. In the Gita, there's a big battle at it. It ends with the battle, and the battle begins. So Prabhupada gave up his allegiance, obviously, to Gandhi, and he regarded that as not honest. He was exploiting the Gita to fire everyone up for the independence fight, and it became this principle of nonviolent resistance, which had its place in convincing the British to leave, but there was also the Indian army contingent that helped. And I think really what really did it was the war, with World War II. I mean, England was on its back, after the war, you can imagine. They got the brunt of the Nazi. Anyway, that's history. So that's this one. And now, satyam. This one should not distort the truth for some personal interest. In the Vedic literature, there's some difficult passages, but the meaning or the purpose. Now this is, once again, I just have to refer this, forgive me. Prabhupada will use the word purpose to mean purport, which is perfectly all right. It's coming right from the Oxford English Dictionary. But in modern American English, no one says purpose as purport, isn't it? So here he says it's the meaning or the purpose. So here it's interesting. I'm sorry, I just lived with this so long. I'm going to have to share this with you. Meaning or purpose. So that can be two things, right? It's the meaning or purpose. All right, so purpose is it. But I'm sure what Prabhupada meant is meaning, comma, or purpose, comma. You understand the difference? Look at the third line there in the paragraph beginning with Satyam. In the Vedic literature, there are some different passages, but the meaning, comma, or the purpose should be learned. That purpose is meant to be purport. But without the commas, it's fine. It's two different things. We want the meaning and also the purpose, and know the purpose of it. Anyway, so that won't change. So that's the process of understanding the Vedas. Shruti means that one should hear from authority. So just contemplate now in the outside world, the havoc that's created by disinformation and misinformation, purposely distorting the truth for some means of gain. I mean, isn't that material life is based on that? Think of the whole structure of profit motive and selling and advertising. There are various levels of untruth that are used in order to convince you to buy. I mean, the basic untruth is that buy this and you'll be happy, right? Buy this and you'll relieve your misery. Now I know I participate in that to some degree. I have a little problem with my tooth. I'm going to the dentist next week. Hopefully we'll take it. But if I chew on this side, there's pain there. So I take this acetaminophen, a little Tylenol, just one. I don't take too much. It's dangerous. And that relieves it a little bit. So I'm participating in that, to overcome that. But that's like the whole material world is like that. You're trying to counteract the miseries by various means. I mean, hunger, right? There has to be a means to get food, shelter, all of the basics, So that's what material life is. You're counteracting the miseries, getting a little space with a little peace where you can try to enjoy those enjoyments which keep you bound up to this world and therefore cause your misery because keep you in a material body. The whole suffering is coming from the body. Because it's such a delicate machine, it grows old, it gets diseased, how many ways, And whatever pleasures there are fleeting. Maya sukhaya badamudvato vimudham. Prahlad Maharaj is appropriate to quote now, is his day, coming up tomorrow. He's delivered. And he has this famous verse where he's explaining what his consciousness is. It's very illustrative. First he says, Naiva Vijay. I'm not at all disturbed, personally. Naiva Vijay Padadodatya Vaitadanyas, because I've already crossed over the Vaitarani river. This is this kind of river between the material and spiritual world. So I'm in the spiritual world, even though I appear to be here, because I'm with you. My consciousness is with you. He's speaking to Nrsingadev. This is after Nrsingadev has killed Hiranyakashipu. These wonderful prayers near the end of his prayers. And this prayer is perhaps the most famous. So this is all about his mood of preaching. He was a fearless preacher. He preached to his father, the biggest demon in the world. He was so powerful that all the demigods except Brahma and Shiva were bowing down to him. Of course, Vishnu, he's not a demigod. But all the other demigods, and even Narada Muni said he has to bow down to him. And he's his father, and he doesn't know that he's a devotee, because he became a devotee in the womb. And he didn't know, But then he has a conversation. He asks him, finally, he's in the school, to train up the little demons. And he comes back from school and takes him on his lap. Says, what have you learned today? What's the best thing you learned today? So the first time, he uses this word udvijay. He says, tat sadhu manye asolavarya dehinam sadasa udvigna diyama sadgrahat. So the first part of it says, well, this is the best thing I've learned, oh Father, but he doesn't call him Father. He calls him the best of demons, the best of the demons, Asuravarya. Best for whom? Best for the embodied soul. So that's all of us, best for all of us, who are always disturbed because a sadgṛhat. A sadgṛhat means we're holding on for dear life to the impermanent. Example is perfect here. We got the ocean a couple blocks away. So imagine you're out in the ocean. You're on one of these little boats, and it springs a leak. People have, so many boats that they go on the ocean. All right, it's a crisis, but luckily we have life preservers. So you and your friend or whatever get in the life preservers, and now you're floating around. You got your cell phone. You call the police. They're coming out and save you. We're good, but there's a leak in the life preservers. The life preservers are not doing their job of holding you. So this bolt, this body is like a leaky life preserver. We're trying to use it to fend off the difficulties of this world and get some pleasure out of it. But ultimately it fails you. You, the soul. You can't be comfortable, you can't be safe, you can't be happy in this body, because the body itself is a machine that breaks down, and slowly. So because we've taken gṛhastha means holding on. We're holding on for dear life to a leaky boat or a life preserver, namely this body. So therefore we're always disturbed. You may have little periods when you're not disturbed, but the general principle is there's a threat of disturbance that itself is a disturbance, and on like that. So what to do? So Krishna, the third line, he's preaching to his father in this one verse. Hit vānaprastha gṛhamanda kūpam. Give up the blind well of materialistic family life with all of these attachments and no Krishna consciousness. Give it up, father. Hit vānaprastha. Now atmapatam, every word counts. That which impedes the progress of the soul. Atma is the soul. Atmapatam gṛhamanda kūpam. And then what should you do? Vanam gato, go to the forest, and it's understood the commentary. This means Vrindavan. Go to Vrindavan forest. And this was the worst anathema words that he could hear. Harimashriyeta. Take shelter of Hari, who Hiranyakashipu regarded as an archenemy because he killed his brother, Hiranyaksha. The names are important. Hiranyaksha means he's always looking for gold. That's a demon. How can I increase my gold? And Hiranyakashipu also has Hiranya. He was attached to the gold and the soft bedding. And Prabhupada adds sometimes, and the bed companion, So the idea is, sensuality, and that's the demons that focused on that. Think mafiosi. So that was the last thing you wanted to hear. You want me to take shelter of my arch enemy, Hari? Get off my, actually at that point, he didn't push him off his lap, because he thought he blamed the teachers. He's just a young kid. Who taught him this? So he looks with this at the teachers, side, and he said, "We didn't teach him. He learned in the womb." Narada Muni. There's a whole backstory I went to. So anyway, the teacher said, "No, don't worry. We can just, he's just a boy. Wherever he got it, we'll get it out of him, and we'll teach him." But they couldn't. Rather, when they went to the tiffin hour, Prabhupada says, when they went to lunch, he would preach to his friends. And therefore, sedition, he would undermine the whole kingdom, because this is the next generation of demons, and now they're becoming devotees. So after a while, then there's another time, I just looked it up. Hiranyakashipu asked him, "All right, what did you learn today?" And he says, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Padasevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakyam Atmani Vedanam. Those who may not know this verse, this defines the 9 processes of devotional service, beginning with hearing and chanting about Vishnu, remembering, Shravanam Vishnu Smaranam Padasevanam, serving the lotus feet, worshipping Archanam, like we see on the altar. Vandanam. Vandanam means bowing down and also praying to. It's a whole thing. I did a seminar with Ramapad Maharaj in Chicago once on Vandanam. And of course, Dasyam. Vandanam, Dasyam, service. Sakyam, becoming a friend. And Atmani Vedanam, surrendering everything. So these are real education. Then he said, this is the real education, Father, The last thing he wanted to hear. He threw him off his... This is after, I think, he already tried to have his henchmen kill him. And he says, okay, look, you say there's some god somewhere. Where is he? Is he in this pillar? Imagine a palace with all these pillars. We have our little faux pillars here. And says, yes, Father, he's everywhere. He's also in the pillar. Show me. And he hits the pillar with his fist. And out comes the Shringadev. and he's roaring, and he's like, shattering the universe. So then there was a battle, and of course Hiranyakashipu lost. And he wasn't killed in the day and the night. He was killed at dusk. He wasn't killed inside or outside. He was killed on the threshold. He wasn't killed by any weapons. Fingernails? They're not kind of weapons, but he was killed by the fingernails. Anyway, they had all this list of criteria which Brahma gave him. He said, yes, but I can't give you, eternal life because I don't have it. So there's a whole backstory to that. So, how did I get off of that from Satyam?
You were talking about, it was a verse about how Prahlad is never in distress because he can always think about being on the other side.
Oh, yes. So just to finish that verse, which is so important. So this is a very important line. And part of my never being in distress is that wherever I am, I can sing your glories, my Lord. Virya Gayana. Virya is this heroic act. Mahamrita Magnachitta. And that's immerse my consciousness, which is who we are, in an ocean of bliss. Great nectarian bliss. So how can I be in trouble? I'm not, udvajay, disturbed. But I am shocheta. What? I am lamenting. I thought you said you weren't disturbed. I'm lamenting for these fools and rascals who are trying to enjoy maya sukhaya, illusory happiness, flickering happiness. That had that's the second half of my favorite verse. These pleasures, whatever they may be, have a beginning and an end. And therefore the wise don't take their pleasure there. They find how, they search out the spiritual pleasure that doesn't end and it always increases. So, vimukhache indriya maya sukhaya bodhamudvato vimudhan. These fools and rascals who are trying to enjoy this flickering happiness. So what am I going to do about it? So then the next verse, they go together. He describes those transcendentalists. Prayena deva muniyo sova mukti kama. It's an interesting phrase, mukti kama. This mukti is, after all, liberation from the pains of birth, old age, disease, and death, and the threefold miseries, which I won't get into detail, but it's another way of categorizing the miseries. So freedom from that is highly to be coveted, I mean, just think, so much of the efforts of the materialistic society is counteracting or relieving or at least reducing the miseries. Prabhupada gives the example. He's on the subway. He experienced in the subway, and he saw advertisement for Anacin, and he says, that's just one of the things. Why do they need Anacin? They decrease the pain, and the suffering. And then he experienced it, and they had so many pills that the Americans take, that they took to sleep, so many different things. Whereas in India, we're not so advanced. We just get one pill. We get the Anacin pill. You're not so advanced because you don't have so many difficulties, whatever. So that's going on with the material life. But you can't really counteract it. So he's saying, for the most part, those who are munis or scholars, Vedic knowledge, they're after their own liberation. And he called it mukti kama. Kama is for your own self. And therefore, maunam charani. They literally, the munis, which comes from the word maunam, which means silence. But the bhaktas, we all supposed to be munis, but it means silence means don't talk about Maya, only talk about Krishna. That's real silence. But here, they literally want to be silent, and they go off. They don't want to stay in the big cities. They want to be alone, go to the forest, go to the hills, go to the Himalayas, in the caves, and meditate. And then try to get mukti. But that's mukti kama. What about all these poor people in the cities who have no inkling of what to do? So Prahlad says, I'm not doing that. I'm not, naidam vihaya kupana. I can't give up these creepiness, these misers and these fools, because I have to give them you. Nanyam tvadati shadanam bhamatoshu nupashe. Those who are wandering in this world, they have no other shelter but you, and I have to inform them of that. Therefore, I'm going to stay in the cities. And Prabhupada was sitting there in Manhattan. He came all the way from Vrindavan, the most idyllic place in the world. In those days, it was really, rural and very idyllic. Now it's been, commodified to some degree. But he could have just stayed there, chanted Hare Krishna, is in Radha Damodar at the foot of the Lord. But he had his order from his spiritual master to preach in the West. And he had Lord Chaitanya's prediction that my name will be heard all around the world. Who's going to do it? Prabhupada had to do it, even at age 69, not 70, 69. He got on that boat, $7, no contacts on the other end, failing health. It seemed like a very far-fetched, and Krishna gave him success. Amazing. So that's what satya means, to be not only to speak the truth, but to put yourself in a position where you can speak the truth and it'll have a tremendous effect on people where they need the truth. We needed this. We're fortunate few, it's still a few, but it's growing, that to learn what real truth is. All right, let's go on. Akrodha. Akrodha means freedom from anger. Akrodha means to check anger. Even if there is provocation, one should be tolerant. For once one becomes angry, his whole body becomes polluted. Anger is a product of the mode of passion and lust, so one who is transcendentally situated should check himself from anger. Apaishana means that one should not find fault with others or correct them unnecessarily. Of course, to call a thief is not fault-finding, but to call an honest person a thief is very much offensive for one who is making advancement in spiritual life. Ri means that, there's another quality, means that one should be very modest and must not perform some act which is abominable. Achapalam, determination, means that one should not be agitated or frustrated in some attempt. There may be failure in some attempt, but one should not be sorry for that. He should make progress with patience and determination. The word tejas used here is meant for the Kshatriyas. The Kshatriyas should always be very strong and to be able to give protection to the weak. They should not pose themselves as non-violent. If violence is required, they must exhibit it. But a person who is able to curb down his enemy may, under certain conditions, show forgiveness. He may excuse minor offenses. Shaucham means cleanliness, not only in mind and body, but in one's dealings also. It is especially meant for the mercantile people who should not deal in the black market. Nati manita, not expecting honor, applies to the Shudras, the worker class, which are considered, according to Vedic injunction, to be the lowest of the four classes. Which are considered. Okay. They should not be puffed up with unnecessary prestige or honor and should remain in their own status. It is the duty of the Shudras to offer respect to the higher class for the upkeep of the social order. All these 26 qualifications mentioned are transcendental qualities. They should be cultivated according to the different statuses of social and occupational order. All right, that's the fixed spiritual, social status and spiritual order. The purport is that even though material conditions are miserable, if these qualities are developed by practice by all classes of men, then gradually it is possible to rise to the highest platform of transcendental realization. I wanted to kind of jump ahead a little bit here and see what we can do. So now, that was all the saintly qualities. Now the demonic qualities. Dambo darpo bimanascha krodha parushyam evacha agyanam chabhijatasya bharta sampadam asurim. Pride, arrogance, conceit, anger, harshness, and ignorance, these qualities belong to those of demoniac nature, O son of Pritha. Purport. In this verse, the royal road to hell is described. The demoniac want to make a show of religion and advancement in spiritual science, although they do not follow the principles. They are always arrogant or proud in possessing some type of education or so much wealth. They desire to be worshipped by others and demand respectability, though they do not command respect. Over trifles, they become very angry and speak harshly, not gently. They do not know what should be done and what should not be done. They do everything whimsically according to their own desire, and they do not recognize any authority. These demoniac qualities are taken on by them from the beginning of their bodies in the wombs of their mothers, and as they grow, they manifest all these inauspicious qualities. Now, just one word on the one mention of the word damba. Damba is the first quality mention of the demons. Prabhupada says pride. Now, pride, it also includes especially this idea of pretension. You notice that Prabhupada begins describing the demoniac 1-2, make a show of religion and advancement in spiritual science. That's damba. It means wanting to look religious but not really being religious. I always give the example of the mafia. I remember when I was a kid, there was a magazine. Some of you may remember this magazine. They're too old. They're not old enough. Life magazine? Okay, Life magazine. Okay, there you go. So it was a big format magazine, full color. It was very popular. And I remember as a kid, I don't know what year or what month, there was a special. There was a big thing of the New York Mafia. And they had pictures of these guys, And none of them looked very happy. I remember that. But I do know, from experience and other exposure, that many of them were Catholics. Just the way, the Italian Mafia, obviously. And they would go to church. They wanted to go to church and be seen in church, But were they really following the tenets of Jesus Christ? Which would be not, I'm not going to go through them, but obviously not. Is anyone, But they were demons. So that's damba. To want to look religious but not really be religious. So there's pride in there, but it's mostly pretension. And the very next word, abhimana. What's that verse? Trinadapi sunicena, todorapi sahishnana, amanina manadena kirtani iksadahari. This is a verse that we should try to fulfill in order to chant successfully and chant constantly. So to be as humble as a blade of grass, more humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, and not to desire any honor, but to give honor to others. So that's just the opposite. The demons want all honor, even though they're not honorable. They're demons, after all. But they demand to be worshipped, So this is a demoniac quality. And anyway, I'm not going to name any names, but you could have your own favorite demon. And the root of it is this lying, disinformation, misinformation, creating all kinds of cults, really cults. Prabhupada calls it Lord Chaitanya cult, but he means culture. It's a culture. It's not but the cult is something. They've created a completely illusory reality that they live in, whoever it is, and. People get sucked into it, and then it's usually disastrous end. I remember, what was that cult where they thought there was I remember driving back to the temple on Grand Avenue, and somehow we heard, I think we had the news on this mass suicide. There was a bunch of suicides. What is it? Heaven's Gate. It was right here. It was based out in North County or something. Some guy, and then there was. Jim Jones, back in, 78. Yeah, I remember the year because it was the same year that I went to Atlanta to work with the BI. I'm on the plane and I'm reading this Time magazine all about this. 900 people died. The whole thing that people don't, it's kind of drink the Kool-Aid. Oh, they drank the Kool-Aid. It means you're part of the cult. You're bewildered. They had. It wasn't Kool-Aid?
No, it was like grape bait or something. I mean, it was similar.
Just see, even that's a lie. But 900 people, and they all died. This crazy guy down in Guyana. He was American. He went down and took him with him. So these are, and it's all from lies. It's complete lie. You just spin it out, and if you have the gullible people who are looking to hang on, the world is full of that. So this movement is just the opposite. It's trying to give the absolute truth for the benefit of all. Like the Hare Krishna mantra. It's free. It's the most valuable thing. It's the means. You can have it. Please chant it, We're not charging anything. Whereas the other guys, it used to be $35, now it's $1,000. And you know what it is? One letter, aing, which is part of the... I'll leave it up to you. Whatever, by the donation only. It's absurd, but people don't know any better. When you have the ignorant people, you can easily, So that's why knowledge is so important. Bhagavad Gita, as it is. Otherwise, you can misuse it, you can misinterpret it. So we're very fortunate to have this. We should really study nicely. All right, we've come to the end of our allotted time, and we will. I don't think we got through with Dambo Darpo, so we'll start there on Monday, and this will be a very exciting weekend starting tomorrow. Appearance of Lord Nrsingadev. Tomorrow. The appearance of Lord Nrsingadev?
Oh, Nrsingadev.
Yeah, Nrsinga Chaturdasi. Yeah.
I think actually Daisy asked me about it, I forgot to ask. So it's tomorrow?
Tomorrow night at 5:30, the big festival, yeah. And if you can, fast till dusk. As I know it's an austerity, but that's... There will be a big feast. Yes, there'll be a big feast after that. All right, one little poem. So, this one came to mind. I don't think I shared it. Some of you may not have heard it. It's based on Rishabhadev's famous verse, 511, which you can look up. And it goes like this in the English. Don't waste this precious human life, dear friend, by working hard for hoggish happiness. Through bhakti yoga, worldly life transcend, and learn to taste divine love's endless bliss. So this is our choice in this world. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.